All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going on an absolute wild ride through the chaotic world of margin rules. Seriously, if you've been banging your head against the wall trying to memorize endless percentages, thresholds, and all those sneaky exceptions for your Series 99 exam, you are exactly where you need to be. By the end of this explainer, we're going to lock these numbers into your brain so tightly, you'll be reciting them in your sleep. We are talking initial margins, maintenance margins, and every single exam trap waiting for you on test day. Get ready, because we're moving fast.
Real quick, this explainer is brought to you by CertFuel. They've got a full Series 99 course loaded with adaptive study quizzes, smart flashcards, and unlimited practice exams that are weighted just like the real thing. It's basically your secret weapon for exam day. Go check them out at certfuel.com. Okay, let's meet the people who are going to help us untangle this margin mess.
Welcome to the trading desk. I want you to meet our cast for today. First up, we've got Ollie, the ops associate. Poor Ollie is chronically stressed, constantly verifying funds, and honestly just trying not to get fired. Then we have Kara, the client. Kara loves risk. She lives for it. She loves making wild trades, buying on margin, shorting terrible stocks, and giving Ollie a daily heart attack. Finally, looming over them both is Sam, the supervisor. Always watching, always checking if Ollie's keeping Kara's trades strictly within regulatory bounds. We're going to follow this trio to see exactly how these margin rules apply in the real world. Now, before Kara makes her first crazy trade, we have got to establish the ground rules. If you only remember one single concept today, make it this memory aid from the source material. It's word for word, and it is absolutely perfect. Ready? Think of it this way. Initial margin is the down payment for opening the position. Maintenance margin is the equity floor that applies while the position remains open. That is it. Initial is what you need to get in the door. Maintenance is the ongoing floor. A margin transaction has two totally separate equity tests, and they answer completely different questions. Never mix them up.
Section 1, Long Stock Margin Rules. Kara's first trade. Let's get into it.
So, it's Monday morning. Kara, the client, calls up Ollie and says she wants to buy some long marginable equity securities. She wants to borrow funds from the broker-dealer, using her account securities as collateral to make this massive purchase. Ollie immediately starts sweating because he has to calculate her required down payment. Boom, 50%. That is the magic number Ollie needs right now. Federal rules generally require 50% initial margin to open this trade. So if Kara wants to buy $100,000 of stock on margin, she literally needs to put down $50,000 as her initial margin just to establish the position. Federal margin rules set this initial treatment.
But listen, Ollie's job is definitely not done after the purchase. Once Kara's position is open, Ollie has to continuously monitor that ongoing equity floor. Under the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, or FINRA, the minimum maintenance requirement for long marginable stock is 25% of the current market value. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is 50% to get in the door under the federal requirement and a 25% floor to stay in the room under the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. If Kara's equity drops below that 25% floor, Ollie's going to have to issue a margin call, demanding more funds or eligible securities immediately.
Okay, hold up. We need to do a quick knowledge check. I want you to look at the question on the screen. Literally, pause the explainer right now, think about your answer, and then hit play when you're ready. Does Ollie require Kara to deposit cash if she hits the $2,000 minimum equity floor, but the security actually costs less than that? Pause now. All right, got your answer? Let's see if you fell for the trap.
Exam trap. If you said yes, you just got caught by one of the test's absolute favorite tricks. Now, what's really interesting here is the purchase cost exception. While a customer's initial deposit generally must satisfy the greatest applicable amount, whether that's the federal amount, FINRA's amount, or a standard $2,000 in equity, the $2,000 minimum equity floor does not require a cash deposit above the actual cost of the security purchased. Seriously? If Kara buys a stock that only costs $1,200, Ollie only needs her to deposit that $1,200, not the full $2,000.
Section 2. Shorting stocks. The rules. Kara goes short.
Buying long is just way too boring for Kara. Now she wants to take on some real chaotic risk. She calls Ollie right back and says she wants to short some non-exempted equity securities. Ollie goes into full-blown panic mode because shorting stock, borrowing shares to sell them in hopes the price drops, flips all the rules upside down. To establish the short position, federal margin rules generally require a massive 150% total margin. Yes, 150%. Ollie has to make sure this giant buffer exists because, theoretically, if a shorted stock goes way up instead of down, Kara's potential losses are completely unlimited. But wait, before you memorize just that number, we've got to look at how that 150% is actually built, because the exam will 100% try to trick you here too.
Exam trap: do not, I repeat, do not confuse total margin with the customer deposit. A short non-exempted equity security generally has a 150% total initial margin. But here's the breakdown. 100% of that comes from the retained short sale proceeds. The customer, Kara, only has to actually deposit another 50% out of her own pocket. 100 plus 50 equals the 150 total. So if the test question asks for Kara's deposit, it's 50%. If it asks for the total margin, it's 150%. Read those questions carefully.
Now what about the ongoing maintenance margin for Kara's risky short positions? Short stock maintenance uses two completely distinct price-based tests. Look at the table here. Kara loves shorting terrible penny stocks. If she shorts a stock priced below $5 per share, Ollie must enforce a maintenance requirement of $2.50 per share or 100% of the current market value, whichever one is greater. But if she shorts a slightly better stock priced at $5 per share or more, the requirement is $5 per share or 30% of the current market value, again, whichever is greater. Below $5, $2.50 or 100%. $5 or more, $5 or 30%. Lock that table in your mind.
Section 3. Bonds, Futures, and Exemptions. Sam, the supervisor, steps in.
So Ollie has barely survived Kara's equity trades today, but now Sam, the supervisor, steps out of his corner office. Sam loves auditing the bizarre exceptions. He slams his coffee mug right on Ollie's desk and starts grilling him on non-equity rules, bonds, and futures. Because, let's be real, on exam day, you aren't just tested on plain old stocks. Sam points out that non-equity maintenance completely depends on credit quality. For investment-grade non-equity debt securities, the safe stuff, the minimum maintenance requirement is a very low 10% of current market value, unless another provision imposes a lesser requirement. But for other listed or margin-eligible non-equity debt, the riskier stuff, the requirement jumps. It becomes the greater of 20% of current market value or 7% of principal. So just remember, 10% for the good stuff, 20% or 7% principal for the rest.
But Sam isn't done yet. He fires off these crucial exceptions rapid fire. First, for other exempted securities, the maintenance requirement is a flat 7% of current market value for both long and short positions. Next, a short bond uses the greater of 5% of principal or 30% of current market value unless a lower exception applies. Now, what if Kara wants a non-margin eligible, non-exempted long equity? Well, she can't borrow for it. 100% payment is required up front, and the maintenance is 100% of current market value. Finally, exempted and non-equity securities get good faith initial treatment. A long position uses the greater of the creditor's good faith requirement or the regulatory percentage. A short position uses 100% of current market value plus the good faith requirement.
Okay, take a deep breath. Sam gives Ollie one last scenario: security futures contracts. Mercifully, security futures are delightfully simple. You just need to remember this one single number: 20%. Whether Kara is long or short on a security futures contract, the initial margin is 20% of current market value, and the minimum maintenance requirement is exactly the same: 20% of current market value. 20 and 20. Those are easy points on the exam.
Section 4. Series 99 Rapid Recap. What should you check on exam day?
You made it through the gauntlet. Ollie, Kara, and Sam are officially clocking out for the day. Now, let's drop the characters for a final high-octane sprint. We are going to lock all these testable thresholds into your short-term memory so you know exactly what to check on test day. First up, long positions. For a long margin equity security, generally use 50% initial federal margin, or the percentage set by the regulatory authority where the trade occurs, if it happens to be greater. Then use 25% of current market value for maintenance. If the security is long but non-margin eligible, you require 100% at purchase and 100% of current market value for maintenance. And hey, never forget this: a brokerage firm may impose a requirement that is more stringent than the applicable federal or FINRA minimum. They can absolutely always make the rules stricter for their own house.
Finally, the short positions. For a short non-exempted equity security, you absolutely must distinguish the 150% total margin from the additional 50% customer deposit. For ongoing short stock maintenance, memorize those price tiers. At $5 or more, use the greater of $5 per share or 30% of current market value. Below $5, use the greater of $2.50 per share or 100% of current market value. And that brings us to the end. You now have the exact blueprint to navigate margin accounts. But I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder while you keep studying. If a brokerage firm can always ignore FINRA and demand a much stricter margin requirement just because they feel like it, who really dictates the true limit of leverage when the market starts to crash? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck crushing your Series 99.